Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined once again by Fiona McAllister. Excited to have her back here as an image consultant. Style by Fiona. That's the website, and of course, how you can find her. And she's here really helping women feel more attractive, more confident, and in their bodies and their selves. And, you know, after your show from a few weeks ago, we did get to learn a little bit about you and your whole history and how you got into the image consulting business as well as personal style coaching. And we talked a little bit generally about psychology, right, of fashion and the challenges as all of us women that we do face from time to time, especially with marketing of fashion. So today, let's dive a little more into the world of colors. I know that's something you want to talk about. Could you tell me your personal thoughts and journey along with colors? And of course, that's going to be one of our big topics today.
You bet. Sorry, I suddenly have a frog in my throat.
Happens all the time, right? We had a frog in the pool yesterday.
Yeah. So, like I had talked about last time, I'm very artistic. And so even from a young age, I kind of had a knack for knowing what colors looked good on me, but I didn't understand the science, if you will. You know, I didn't know why. I just would put up something that was warm toned and I'd be like, ew, that's awful. And then I would put up something that's cool toned and I'd be like, yeah, okay, that works. And so we'll get into a little bit more of those kinds of things as we go along today. But I've just always had a real love of color and dressing colorfully, and just I'm kind of a loud, boisterous, colorful sort of person. So having a lot of color in my life really makes a big difference. So just real quick, I'll show you an example of what I mean by that some colors work really well for us and some colors don't work really well for us. So this is one of my tools that I use with clients. And my worst color, or one of my worst colors, is this yellowy gold color. And it may not be quite as easy to see on the computer, and because I am wearing a bit of makeup, but if I hold this up to my face,
Oh my gosh.
it doesn't do me a lot of favors. Can you see that?
Yeah, I don't know. I like it.
No, you like it?
Orange.
Well, it might be because I'm wearing some makeup, so, and that can interfere with
Okay.
the skin reacts. But let me show you a color that is fantastic.
Fantastic on you. Well, the red looks great that I'm seeing now.
Yes, that is, you know, part of the process of knowing what sort of things work for you and whatnot. But this purple works really great for me. Yeah, good. Stick a witch in there.
Ooh, that's like, is that like a royal blue? Or it's more
hard to see. It's actually a deep purple, but
That's
sometimes
so
the camera doesn't make the colors
Yeah.
through exactly as they should. But here, I'll hold them up side by side and maybe that'll help.
Oh,
But
oh yeah. Okay, clearly there's a winner. Uh-huh.
right, you can see which one is far better.
Yeah.
And so this is just part of the process of what I do when I'm working with people. Well, when I do it in person, when I do it online, it's a little bit different process. But when I do it in person, we use these color swatches and color drapes to determine what works and what doesn't. But yeah.
Now, if someone has a darker skin, I think that the oranger tone would look good, right?
It can. Yeah, the orange one works best for people who fall into one of the autumn seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm a winter, and that orange is really bad for me. That particular orange is bad for me. There are oranges that I can wear, and we can get into more of that as we go along. But that particular goldish orange is very bad for most winters.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're talking color, obviously, and why color analysis is so important, would you say?
Well, the thing of the matter is that color analysis has made a really big comeback since the 80s, mostly because of social media. But for people who've been in the industry and have been color analysts or image consultants, it's been something that we've been using for probably 80 years, just about. And but it got really popular in the 80s because of Carol Jackson's book, Color Me Beautiful. But it had a much older history. It originally started with Suzanne Cagill in the 1940s in Hollywood, at least in the Western world. It might have other histories in other parts of the world, but color analysis as we know it in the image industry started with Suzanne Cagill. And other authors like Susan Carroll, that's the one. Other authors like Carol Jackson attended her workshops and simplified and mainstreamed her work. But essentially, color analysis is applying the principles of color harmony and color theory to our bodies to discover what harmonizes or clashes with us personally. And it's important because the colors that work best for us will help us look better and feel better, as you saw when I held up those two in demonstration. The one that when you could see them comparison side by side, the orange was really bad, and well, it's purple, but it might have looked blue on my camera, but that one was much better. And so from a psychological standpoint, when you choose colors that harmonize with your personality and what work on you personally, it's kind of like a form of self-love and self-acceptance. And I see that a lot with my clients when we're doing our work. So in terms of how we do a color analysis, the most common way is based on the seasonal system, which—
Got it. As you mentioned, the fall with the oranges later before. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't have my tool on my table here. I thought I did, but just give me 1 second. I'll grab it. It's just right
Sure.
here.
Yep. So I know she's gonna talk to more of us about the four seasons. Obviously, we know spring, summer, autumn, and winter. But there's also subseasons she'll get into momentarily. And if you are just tuning in, go to stylebyfiona.com. Again, Fiona McAllister joining us here. And we're going to talk about seasons in just a sec. And she is back. Hey. So you taught me something new. I only know the four seasons, but you're telling me there's subseasons. So it's a total of 12?
Yes, for the most part.
Okay.
There can be up to 16, but that's getting very advanced.
Okay.
So the first thing that we do when we start a color analysis is we determine if somebody is either warm or cool toned. And so if you look on this color wheel that I'm holding up, you can see that half of it's yellow and half of it's blue, right?
Yeah.
And then when I turn it over, it shows you which of the colors, try not to get the shine from my window in there. So these are the blue based, which are cool toned, and these are kind of the yellow based, which are warm toned, right? And so the cool colors look better on winter and summer seasons, and the warm colors are the spring and autumn seasons. And then the second measure that we use after that is how bright or muted the colors are that look good on somebody. So let me just pull up my different color tools here to illustrate that. So on the top stick, it's got gray added to the regular color, and on the bottom stick is kind of the pure color,
like primary.
Yeah, so you can see how the top one is duller, muted, the bottom one is brighter, pure. And so the winter is cool and bright, the spring is warm and bright, summer is cool and muted, and autumn is cool and muted. And I got a little chart here that hopefully you'll be able to see when I hold it up. Maybe it's a little hard to see. Can you see? Oh,
no. Okay, so we got dark to the left of the side of the screen and up on top. So dark winter. Yeah. Then I see dark autumn. Yeah, you can explain it. I see it perfectly.
Okay, awesome. So on this axis here is where my fingers are, is the cool. Okay. And on this side axis here is the warm. Okay. And in the corners, we have what creates the subseasons. So dark, you can have subseasons of dark winter or dark autumn. With bright, you can have subseasons of bright winter or bright spring. Light, you can have subseason of light spring and light summer. And I'll move it up a little bit so you can see it just in case. And With the soft, you can have a subseason of soft autumn or soft summer. And so when I'm doing an analysis with people, I use this chart to help them find out which kind of cluster of colors works best
Uh-huh.
for them, right? And the funny thing about this whole process is I have had some clients, they're like, well, which exactly colors look best on me? And I say, well, did you ever see the movie The Pirates of the Caribbean? And it's like, it's more like guidelines than actual rules.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so it's about finding which kind of cluster in those areas that you fall under that works best. Because there are some colors that really, I mean, you can wear whatever you want, but it's about whether you're going to look good in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true,
So
right?
yeah. But yeah, so that's how we kind of determine which are the where somebody fits on the whole thing, right? Or
So
the whole spectrum, I guess, for lack of
got
a
it.
better
Yeah,
term.
yeah, yeah. So the other way you say that some image consultants do color analysis is they use the above principles. So you said making custom palettes for clients. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So sometimes people will, or image consultants will use sticks that are similar to this or paints, and they will build a custom palette for clients. And so it's still kind of based loosely on the seasonal principles, even if it's not called a seasonal analysis. And so they will color match people with paints, and they will paint a palette for you, or use the color matching with the fabrics and base it on your eyes, specifically your cheeks, your hair color, your wrist veins, your hands. So pulling the colors right out of your natural coloring and painting a palette for you that way, or using pre-existing tools, kind of like the one I showed you, that they will put a palette together that way as well. But I find that for most of my clients, the seasonal is sufficient. I mean, there are a few people who have the money and who want to go to that kind of a depth,
Mm-hmm.
but those palettes tend to be a lot more expensive because they have to be kind of special ordered or specially made.
Right.
Whereas the seasonal palettes we can use, we can get them that are pre-made and come with a variety of colors. So here I've just got an example. I've got one of the summer ones that I use with my summer clients, and it's got like 200 different colors on it, right?
I feel like
And
you're Benjamin Moore, part of the for the paint companies. When I go to Home Depot, and yeah, those are the paint charts.
yeah, just
Look at
about.
that.
But they're separated into the colors that look
Yeah.
best on that season. And I use these palettes because they are so versatile and they have so many colors
Yeah.
that all three different summers that you come across, they're all in here. And you can borrow from other of your subseasons, of course, and you can play around with color. Like I said, these are guidelines, not actual rules, right? And so it's not a strict, you only look good in this one shade of blue.
Wow.
Well,
Well, that's what you mentioned. Like online, people have gotten pigeonholed, right? In a sense, by this is like serious. But explain that what happens to some people out there who, some consultants, use, well, custom palettes, some use the basics, right?
yeah. So sometimes what can happen with people who come to see me is that they've looked up color analysis, and they've seen videos on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, or they've looked up articles that they found on whatever fashion blog or magazine or whatnot, and they'll come to me and they're like, okay, I'm pretty sure that I'm this whatever season. And I'll say, okay, where did you get your information, right? Or sometimes they'll be like, I have no idea what I am because winters only look like this. Winters only have dark black hair and pale skin, like the stereotypical ones that were made popular by Carol Jackson's book. But the fact of the matter is that there's uh, an unlimited amount of expressions, like as many, sorry, I've got a piece of dust floating around here, but as many people as there are in the world is how many expressions of beauty that there are, right? And it's just about finding which kind of cluster works for you. And that's why I really recommend that you hire a professional who's been trained in this, because if you only use the information that's available online, you may end up mistyping yourself or I don't know, giving yourself the wrong information anyway, but what you think you are. And I don't know how many times that's happened. People come into me and they're like, well, I'm just confirming that I'm an autumn. And it turns out that they're a winter after we do the whole process. And then sometimes that can be really affirming, and sometimes it can be really even a bit distressing for people because they have gotten the idea that they're a certain color or a certain colors look better on them. And so that's why I say that this is also a very much a psychological process too, is that we have ideas about what colors, certain colors mean, and um, both based on culture as well as our personal definitions, I guess you will, or our personal associations and memories that we make with those colors, right? So um, yeah, that's why I really recommend people hiring a professional to do this. I mean, if you are already very artistic, you have a better chance than if you're not. But I had an artist come to me just a few months ago, and she was like, I had never thought of applying color theory to my own body. She's like, this is so fascinating, and she just loved it. And she was actually really grateful when she's like, I don't have to wear black. She was an autumn. She hates black, but everybody's like, black is slimming, right? And so it's not necessarily slimming if the color makes you look sick.
Yeah. Can I just ask you a question about this? Because I think my mother spent her whole life, unfortunately, she's passed now, but she had it, but she always thought she was fat, right? So people who I think feel over always wore, my mom always wore black. It was that, or she was very depressed, maybe both, but she
Yeah.
always loved black. And so I got used to growing up always wearing black because I like black too. But what is, as an image consultant, do you tell people to stay away from black? I mean, because it does make you feel slimmer, sexier, I think, but what is there a downside to black? I just had to add this in.
No worries. Um, it really depends on what your season is. Winters are the ones who can get away with the truest, deepest blacks. Um, and summers can get away. So, like every season has its own version of the color, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So, the black, of you will, of an autumn is usually going to be a deep chocolate brown. So, it will have the same effect as wearing pure black would for a winter, but because the black can clash with an autumn's warm tone, it can make them look sick, and that's not really helpful. Or it
Uh-huh.
can overpower them, right? And
Yeah.
some springs can get away with blacks if they're the spring leaning toward winter, which is the bright spring. But because spring is also warm toned, they're better off in those deep chocolate browns as well, in terms of a color that gives them both authority and a slimming effect. So, like dark colors have authority attached to them most of the time, whereas light colors have more easygoing, softer meanings. So, if you're like in business wear, you want to find something that's in your palette that has that dark
Yeah.
authoritative meaning, but that's going to flatter your skin tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Sure.
the black for a summer would be like a deep charcoal gray kind of
Oh
thing.
my gosh. Wow. Okay. I'm learning so much about this. Awesome. Awesome. We got to remind everyone how we can reach you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Website, social media page, all the above.
Okay. So my website is stylebyfiona.com, and um my social media tags are pretty much everything that I'm on anyway is the social media / style by Fiona. Or if you go into it, like I'm not big on TikTok yet. I'll get there, I guess. But my biggest social media that I do the most on is YouTube at the moment,
Huh?
and some Instagram. But yeah, just everything at Style by Fiona. So Instagram / Style by Fiona, YouTube / Style by Fiona, or go inside and type up Style by Fiona and I should come up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We still have a few minutes left. Let's continue the conversation. What other bullet points do we want to get in for today? I know there's a lot more notes. I'm not sure we could specifically get to all of them, but what
That's
else did
okay.
you want to add? Yeah, for now.
Well, um, I think I'll talk about kind of the what we were just talking about a little bit about how every season has its own version of different colors. And so people will come to me and they'll be like, well, I can't wear red, for example. I say, okay, well, what kind of red are you trying to wear? And they might be like, uh red's red, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I say, well, no, just like how we just talked about how black isn't always black for every season, it's the same thing with red. Like I've got an example here with my color palettes. I'll hold up a couple of them, and the red is the top one, and it might be a little tricky to see online there, but hopefully you can get the idea anyways. um okay, so you can see the red across the top there is a little bit different for each season.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I see that. Hold on.
so the color red has its own version for each season, right? And so it's about finding which version,
Oh Lord.
which comes from which
There's
season you are.
okay.
And so that's why
Interesting.
it's so important, right? And I mean, on the psychological side, red has been associated with like passion and danger, aggressiveness, fire, heroics, all of those kinds of things. So on an individual level and on a cultural level, colors carry different meanings as well. And so when you choose to wear red to an event, you're going to get noticed just because red is a pop out sort of color. And so there's learning how to use the colors for business purposes and for social purposes.
Yeah, it's got to be a big one. Social media, right? Everyone and
Yeah,
marketing, that's huge, right? To draw people in, and even your logo, right? And yeah, the first thing you see when you go to the website, you never. It's funny, you never really think so much, but color analysis is everywhere.
it
And you
is.
also mentioned about self-acceptance too, right?
Absolutely. And so what I found with that regard is has been the most rewarding for me to do color analysis for clients is because when people will come to me, well, for example, I had a client from India a few months ago, and she turned out that she was an autumn, but she really loved the winter colors. And basically, what had happened is she told me so. And she's like, are you sure? So we went through it again, just like I'm like, here, and let's compare the winter and the autumn together because we don't always do it that way. But I compared the winter and the autumn colors on her at like the same versions, like the blues and the reds and stuff. And so when we did the winter and the autumn together on her, she's like, yeah, okay, I see that the autumn is better for me. And I said, okay, so what was your ideas? Why was winter so challenging for you or why did you want to be a winter, right? And she had told me that in her culture, like the traditional and ceremonial clothes in the Indian culture were um, very bright and cool toned. And so she'd been pushed to wear all of those colors at her ceremonial. I'm afraid I don't know a whole lot about the Indian culture, but at the ceremonies that her family would do, she'd been pushed to wear those sorts of colors. But we looked over the winter or the autumn palette, and she was able to accept that there were some very rich and beautiful colors in the autumn palette as well, that she could have her saris made into those colors, right? And so it helped her to accept who she is, like the body she's been given and the colors that she has naturally. um and I've had those kind of experiences with many different clients, and I've even had people like start crying in my office because of how affirming knowing the colors are that works best for them. Because they're like, I finally don't have to wear black anymore. Like that other lady I was telling you about, she was like, well, she didn't cry, but she was very thankful. She's like, oh, thank heavens I don't have to wear black. I hate
Yeah.
black, you know? And
Uh-huh.
um and yeah, and so it's just like um when we know what colors work best for our skin and our
Perfect way to
hair
sum
and
it up because we were out of time. Yes, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry,
No,
no
it's
worries.
okay.
But yeah, that's basically what it is that when we wear the right colors, it helps us psychologically to accept our bodies and accept ourselves. And when we see them in the color analysis, we can see which one works best and which one doesn't. Like when I showed you at the very beginning, that one on the purple looked really great and the orange didn't look so great. But yeah, so essentially what I would encourage people to do is to understand that what looks good on us has nothing to do with what's on the runways, and what the fashion industry is saying is currently on trend or whatever. It has everything to do with which colors look best for you. And getting an analysis done will give you the tools to be able to go shopping with confidence and to know what colors work for you. And it'll save you a lot of time and a lot of money in the long run through trial and error.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for everything, for being here. Fiona, tell us how we can reach you.
Fiona at FionaStyleByFiona.com is my email.
Perfect.
And you can call me at 403-966-5896 and we can talk about doing online if you're far away, or if you're in Calgary, then yeah, we can do that too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry we got a late start with the notes, but hopefully we'll have it down pat next time. But thank you. Very informative presentation today. Thanks so much. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.